The hydrospanner slipped from M. Morgan's calloused fingers and clattered against the metal grating. She cursed under her breath, the sound lost in the ambient hum of the salvage station's life support systems. 8 years of maintaining other people's ships had taught her patience. But today, something felt off. The recycled air tasted metallic, carrying whispers of a coming storm. From her position beneath the console, M could see only the worn boots of passers-by, technicians and dock workers, hurrying with unusual purpose. She slid out from the maintenance hatch, wiping grease on her faded overalls. The patch on her chest read simply, Morgan, E., with the designation Engineer, Class 2, a far cry from the insignia she'd once worn. Morgan! The voice belonged to Jin Park, the station's chief technician and one of the few people M considered a friend. You're needed on Dock 7. M frowned, gathering her tools. I'm scheduled for the atmospheric scrubbers in Section 4. Jin's dark eyes darted nervously. Change of plans. Director's orders. What's at Dock 7? M kept her voice level, though alarm bells rang in her mind. Dock 7 was reserved for diplomatic vessels and high-ranking military. Neither had any business requesting a maintenance engineer. Centurions, Jin whispered, helping M pack her toolkit. Their envoy ship docked 20 minutes ago. Unscheduled. M's fingers froze on a calibration tool. The Centurion Alliance, humanity's tentative allies after decades of Cold War posturing. Their ships rarely ventured this far into human space, especially to a salvage station orbiting a nameless gas giant on the fringes of settled territory. Why would they need a grease monkey like me? The question was rhetorical. M knew the answer, even before Jin's expression confirmed her fears. They're demanding a human pilot for some kind of ceremonial boarding procedure. Station director checked the roster and found only one person with flight certification. M's throat constricted. That's impossible. My records were sealed, not erased. Jin finished, apologetic. When they ran the scan for qualified personnel, your old military files flagged. I tried to bury them again, but... He trailed off, helpless. 8 years of careful anonymity threatened to unravel. 8 years since Commander Amelia Hayes had been stripped of rank and dishonorably discharged. 8 years since she'd watched her squadron die while following orders she later couldn't prove were sabotaged. I can't, M said, shaking her head. Find someone else. Jin's voice dropped further. There is no one else. The Centurions have made it clear. No pilot. No continued diplomatic relations. The weight of the situation settled on M's shoulders. She'd spent nearly a decade hiding from her past, burying her instincts beneath maintenance routines and the anonymity of her new identity. Now, fate had found her anyway. What do they want me to do? She asked finally. Just a ceremonial docking procedure. Their envoy vessel needs to be brought into the internal bay. Standard approach and landing. Jin hesitated. You'll need to wear this. From behind his back, he produced a sleek black flight suit with the station insignia. Not a pilot's uniform, but close enough to pass for diplomatic purposes. M stared at it as though it were a venomous creature. I haven't flown in 8 years, Jin. He met her gaze steadily. Some things you don't forget. The walk to Dock 7 felt interminable. With each step, M felt the carefully constructed walls of her new identity crumbling. The flight suit fit perfectly, a cruel reminder of what she'd lost. Her hands, steady, with a hydrospanner, now trembled slightly at her sides. The dock's antechamber bustled with station officials in their formal uniforms. M recognized Director Harlow, gray-haired and stern, conversing in hushed tones with a tall human in diplomatic corps attire. Both glanced up as she entered, relief and suspicion mingling in their expressions. Engineer Morgan, Director Harlow's voice carried a warning. You've been temporarily reassigned to pilot duty. This is Ambassador Reed from Earth Central. The diplomat's handshake was firm, his smile practiced. Thank you for stepping in on such short notice. The Centurions are particular about protocol. They've requested a human pilot to guide their vessel into our interior docking bay as a sign of trust. M nodded stiffly. I'm not rated for diplomatic procedures, sir. Just follow standard approach vectors, Reed said dismissively. Their ship uses intuitive controls. The Centurion delegation will observe from the bridge, but their pilots will be standing by if needed. Something in his tone raised M's hackles. This wasn't standard procedure for any diplomatic mission she'd ever heard of. And if I refuse? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Director Harlow's face hardened. Then, I'll be forced to review your personnel file more closely. Engineer Morgan, or should I say, Commander Hayes. The threat hung in the air between them. M's jaw tightened. When do we start? The Centurion vessel loomed in the exterior dock, its sleek hull gleaming under the harsh industrial lighting. Unlike the utilitarian designs of human ships, this craft featured elegant, sweeping lines that somehow conveyed both beauty and menace. The boarding tube extended from the station, connecting to an airlock that pulsed with soft blue light. Remember, Ambassador Reed murmured as they approached. The Centurions value precision above all else. No improvisation, no deviations from protocol. M said nothing. Her focus had narrowed to the task ahead. Get in. Fly the ship to the interior dock. Get out. Simple. Mechanical. Nothing that would awaken the memories she'd spent years suppressing. The airlock cycled, bathing them in disinfectant mist before the inner doors parted to reveal a Centurion welcoming party. M had seen their kind in news broadcasts and training videos, but never in person. They stood nearly 7 feet tall, their slender frames draped in iridescent robes that shifted color with each movement. Their skin had a faint, bluish tinge, stretched over angular features that seemed almost human, but not quite. Most striking were their eyes, large, multifaceted organs that reflected light like precious gems. The lead Centurion stepped forward, its movements fluid and precise. Ambassador Reed, it said in flawless English, its voice melodic despite the formal tone. We are gratified by your punctual arrival. Ambassador Thess, Reed bowed slightly. May I present our pilot for the docking procedure? Engineer Morgan. The Centurion's faceted eyes fixed on M, who fought the urge to step back. Something in that gaze seemed to pierce through her carefully constructed facade, examining what lay beneath. Curious, Ambassador Thess said finally. Your designation indicates engineering specialization, yet you are assigned pilot duty. M maintained a neutral expression. I'm cross-trained, Ambassador, station policy. A lie, but a necessary one. Behind Ambassador Thess, another Centurion shifted position, its robes darker and adorned with what appeared to be military insignia. This one's gaze was even more penetrating, bordering on hostile. Admiral Voss oversees security for our delegation, Liz explained, noting M's attention. He has reservations about human pilots. Admiral Krell Voss inclined his head slightly, the gesture containing neither warmth nor respect. Recent history suggests cause for such reservations. M's spine stiffened. Was that a reference to her court-martial? Impossible. The records were sealed, accessible only to the highest levels of Earth military command. This had to be about broader human-Centurion tensions. The bridge awaits. Ambassador Thess continued smoothly. Time is optimal for docking procedures. The group proceeded through corridors that somehow managed to feel both cramped and cavernous. The ship's interior featured the same flowing aesthetic as its hull, with few right angles and surfaces that seemed to pulse with subtle light. M noted with professional interest that despite its alien design, the vessel's layout followed logical patterns similar to human spacecraft. Life support, propulsion, navigation all positioned in efficient relation to one another. The bridge opened before them, A semicircular space dominated by a view screen, showing the salvage station's exterior docking arms. Control consoles curved around a central pilot station that looked nothing like the utilitarian interfaces M was accustomed to. Instead of physical controls, the console featured a glowing display of light patterns that shifted and pulsed like living things. "Your position," Admiral Voss gestured to the pilot's chair, his tone making it clear he expected hesitation or incompetence. M approached the console, keeping her movements deliberate and her face impassive. The chair conformed to her body as she sat, adjusting automatically to her human proportions. The control interface brightened, symbols rearranging themselves into patterns that, while alien, contained a logic she could begin to decipher. "The docking procedure requires precision navigation through the station's defense grid," Ambassador Reed explained from behind her. "The Centurions have granted us the honor of guiding their vessel as a gesture of trust." M nodded, her eyes already mapping the interface. Flight controls would be central, navigation parameters to the right, propulsion and power management to the left. Standard organization regardless of species. She extended her hands, hovering them above the glowing surface, feeling a familiar calm settling over her. Despite everything, despite 8 years of determined avoidance, her body remembered this. "Shall I provide instruction?" The question came from a Centurion technician standing nearby. "No need." The words left M's mouth before she could consider their implications. Too confident, too familiar. She corrected quickly. "Basic controls appear analogous to human systems." Admiral Voss made a sound that might have been skepticism. "Proceed. Then, we will observe." M took a deep breath and placed her hands on the interface. The controls responded to her touch with a warm vibration, lights flowing around her fingers like water. Intuitive was an understatement. The ship seemed to anticipate her intentions, responding to the slightest pressure. M couldn't help the small smile that tugged at her lips. Whatever else the Centurions might be, they built magnificent ships. "Initiating undocking sequence," she announced, maintaining a professional tone. "Retracting moorings and powering main thrusters to station-keeping levels." The vessel detached from the exterior dock with barely a tremor, hanging suspended in space as M oriented it toward the station's massive interior bay. The gas giant loomed behind them, its swirling storms a canvas of amber and crimson. "Approach vector calculated," M continued, guiding the ship forward. "Proceeding at 1/4 thrust." The ship responded beautifully, its movements precise and elegant. M found herself relaxing into the familiar rhythm of flight, her hands dancing across the controls with muscle memory she'd tried for years to forget. This was who she had always been, not the quiet engineer hiding in maintenance shafts, but a pilot who could read the vacuum between stars like others read books. "Your technique is unexpected," Ambassador Thess observed, moving to stand beside the pilot's chair. "You handle our vessel as though born to it." M tensed, realizing she'd let her guard down. "Standard approach procedures, Ambassador. Nothing special." "Indeed. Admiral Voss, would you not agree that Engineer Morgan displays exceptional aptitude?" The Centurion Admiral's multifaceted eyes narrowed. "I would say she displays training inconsistent with her stated position." Before M could respond, the ship shuddered, a slight vibration that would have been imperceptible to anyone not attuned to the subtle language of spacecraft. Her hands froze over the controls, senses suddenly alert. "What was that?" Ambassador Reed demanded. "Power fluctuation in the starboard stabilizers." M replied automatically, her fingers already adjusting the distribution. "Minor, but—" Another shudder, stronger this time. Warning symbols flashed across the interface. "System diagnostic," Admiral Voss barked to his technicians. "Report!" M didn't wait for their assessment. Her hands moved across the console, calling up subsystem data, tracking the cascade of anomalies that were appearing with alarming speed. This wasn't random malfunction. The pattern was too coordinated, too precisely targeted at critical systems. "We're being sabotaged," she said quietly, pitching her voice for Ambassador Reed's ears only. The diplomat's face paled. "That's impossible. The security protocols—" "Someone knew we were coming," M cut him off. "And they don't want this ship docking safely." The ship lurched violently, sending several Centurions staggering. M's hands gripped the controls, compensating automatically. "Life support systems compromised," a Centurion technician reported, voice strained but disciplined. "Backup generators engaged, but functioning at reduced capacity." Admiral Voss moved swiftly to M's side. "Relinquish control, human. This requires Centurion expertise." M ignored him, her focus absolute as she rerouted power, bypassed failing systems, and maintained their approach vector through sheer force of will. The ship fought her, sluggish and wounded, but she refused to yield. 30 seconds to docking bay," she announced. "We need emergency medical team standing by. Life support will fail completely in approximately 12 minutes at current degradation rates." "How could you possibly calculate?" Ambassador Reed began. "Because I've seen this before," M snapped, abandoning pretense. "Now shut up and let me fly." The bridge fell silent, except for the urgent communications between Centurion technicians. M felt Admiral Voss's presence beside her, watching her hands with new intensity. "You are not what you claim to be," he said, voice low enough that only she could hear. M met his gaze briefly. "Neither is this situation." The ship shuddered again, more violently this time. New alarms blared as external sensors detected incoming danger, a cluster of asteroids, pulled from their orbits by the gas giant's gravity, directly in their path. "Evasive action," Admiral Voss commanded. But M was already moving, her hands flowing across the controls with practiced grace. The ship banked sharply, narrowly avoiding the first massive rock. The inertial dampeners strained, and everyone on the bridge grabbed for support. "This approach is now impossible," Ambassador Thez stated, clinging to a nearby console. "We must retreat and—" "No," M interrupted, eyes fixed on the view screen where asteroids tumbled in chaotic patterns. "If we turn back, we'll be caught in the debris field when life support fails. Our only chance is forward." Without waiting for approval, she increased thrust, weaving the damaged vessel through gaps between asteroids that seemed impossibly narrow. The ship responded to her touch with increasing sensitivity, as though it recognized the skill in her commands. Admiral Voss barked orders in the Centurion language, presumably attempting to override her control. The console flickered, but M countered instantly, locking out external commands with a series of rapid gestures. "What are you doing?" Ambassador Reed demanded, horror in his voice. "Saving your lives," M replied tersely. "Unless you'd prefer I follow protocol and let us all die." She executed a rolling dive beneath a tumbling asteroid, the size of a small shuttle, then immediately pulled up to avoid a cluster of smaller debris. The maneuver would have been challenging in a fighter craft. In a diplomatic vessel with compromised systems, it was nearly impossible. Nearly. Memories flashed through M's mind. The simulator at the academy, where she'd broken every record. The countless hours of combat drills. The final desperate flight that had ended her career. She'd been the best pilot in the fleet once. Perhaps she still was. "Impact imminent," a Centurion technician called. M's hands danced faster, pushing the ship beyond its design limitations. The vessel screamed in protest, metal and circuitry straining as she forced it into a maneuver that defied conventional physics. For a moment, the bridge crew was weightless, suspended between momentum and gravity as the ship twisted through an impossible gap in the asteroid field. Then, they were through. The station's interior docking bay looming ahead. M's breathing was steady, her focus absolute as she aligned the damaged vessel with the bay's approach corridor. "Emergency protocols active," she reported, requesting immediate docking clearance. The station responded instantly, bay doors yawning wide to receive them. M guided the ship forward with delicate precision, compensating for failing stabilizers and fluctuating power levels. Despite everything, the damage, the asteroids, the years of disuse, her skills remained undiminished. The ship settled onto the docking clamps with only the gentlest bump, a perfect landing under impossible circumstances. For a moment, no one moved or spoke. M sat motionless at the controls, the adrenaline slowly ebbing from her system. Then, the emergency teams swarmed the ship, medical personnel and damage control technicians flooding through the airlocks. M rose from the pilot's chair, suddenly conscious of the many eyes upon her, human and Centurion alike. Ambassador Reed stared as though seeing her for the first time. Admiral Voss's expression was unreadable, but his posture had changed subtly, the hostility replaced by something more complex. "Engineer Morgan," Ambassador Thess approached, robes shimmering with colors M couldn't name. Or perhaps that designation is insufficient. M straightened her shoulders, 8 years of hiding falling away in an instant. "My name is Amelia Hayes." "Yes," the Centurion ambassador nodded. "We are aware." The statement hit M like a physical blow. "You knew? All along?" "We requested you specifically," Admiral Voss interjected, moving to stand beside Ambassador Thess. "Though we expected resistance from your authorities." M's mind raced to process this revelation. "But why? I'm disgraced, court-martialed. My own people don't trust me to fly." "Which is precisely why we wish to evaluate you ourselves," Ambassador Thess explained. "Recent information has come to light suggesting your trial was compromised." The world seemed to tilt beneath M's feet. 8 years of guilt and self-recrimination, of nightmares filled with the faces of her dead squadron. And now, they casually mentioned compromised evidence. "What information?" she demanded, voice barely controlled. Admiral Voss produced a small data device from within his robes. "Communications intercepted from factions within your own military hierarchy. Your mission was designed to fail. Commander Hayes, you were merely the scapegoat." M stared at the device, afraid to hope yet unable to stop herself. "Why would Centurions care about clearing my name?" "We don't," Admiral Voss stated bluntly. "We care about competence. The sabotage today was a test, one you passed more impressively than anticipated." "A test?" Ambassador Reed sputtered. "You endangered a diplomatic mission, risked lives." "Controlled risks," Ambassador Thess corrected. Admiral Voss's technicians maintained override capabilities throughout. Had Commander Hayes failed, intervention would have been immediate. M struggled to process the implications. "So the asteroid field?" "A fortunate coincidence that provided additional evaluation parameters," Admiral Voss acknowledged. "Your response exceeded all projected outcomes." A cold anger began to replace M's confusion. 8 years, she said quietly. 8 years hiding, believing I'd failed my squadron, that their deaths were my responsibility. And you turned it into a recruitment test? The Centurion Admiral met her gaze without flinching. "Your resentment is justified but misplaced. We did not orchestrate your downfall, Commander. We merely recognized its injustice before your own people did." "What do you want from me?" M asked finally. Ambassador Thess gestured toward the view screen, where the gas giant's storms raged in silent fury. "The treaty between our peoples is fragile, built on diplomatic language rather than true understanding. We believe the future of human-Centurion relations lies not with ambassadors, but with those who can bridge our differences through shared skills." "You want me to fly for you," M translated, the realization dawning. "We want you to teach," Admiral Voss corrected. "A new program, joint training for human and Centurion pilots. Your unorthodox methods would be valuable. The program would include full exoneration, of course." Ambassador Thess added, "Your record restored. though we understand if you prefer not to return to military service. M's thoughts whirled. Exoneration. Vindication. A chance to fly again, to teach others. Everything she'd lost, offered back to her by the most unexpected source. "I need time to consider," she said finally. Admiral Voss inclined his head. "Understandable. We will remain at this station for 3 standard days while repairs are completed. You have until our departure to decide." As the emergency teams continued their work, M found herself alone on the bridge with Jin, who had arrived with the station's response crew. Her old friend surveyed the damaged systems with professional interest, though his attention kept returning to M. "So," he said finally, "Commander Hayes." M managed a weary smile. "Just M is fine." "Will you take their offer?" Jin asked, abandoning pretense of focusing on the equipment. M gazed out at the stars visible beyond the station's structure. "I don't know. Going back to who I was." "You never stopped being her," Jin pointed out gently. "You just stopped admitting it." The truth of his words resonated through her. Every day for 8 years, she'd suppressed her instincts, ignored her training, denied her very nature. And for what? To hide from a judgment that had been rigged from the start? "What would you do?" she asked. Jin considered for a moment. "I'd remember that moving forward doesn't have to mean forgetting the past. It can mean reclaiming it on your own terms." M nodded slowly, her decision crystallizing. "I need to see Admiral Voss." She found the Centurion Admiral in the station's observation lounge, his tall form silhouetted against the panoramic view of the gas giant. He turned as she approached, those multifaceted eyes studying her with renewed interest. "Commander Hayes," he acknowledged, "you've reached a decision swiftly." "Some choices are easier than others," M replied. "I'll accept your offer, with conditions." Admiral Voss tilted his head, the gesture somehow conveying both surprise and approval. "State your terms." "First, I want all the evidence you have about my court-martial. Everything." "Granted. The data is yours regardless of your decision." M nodded, then continued. "Second, I won't wear a uniform, yours or humanity's. I'll teach as a civilian contractor. Appearance is immaterial. Skill is what matters." "And third," M hesitated, then committed to the path she'd chosen. "I want to name my own teaching staff, starting with Jin Park." The Admiral's expression remained impassive, but something like respect flickered in his gaze. "Your engineer colleague lacks pilot certification. He understands systems better than any pilot I've ever known," M countered. "If we're building bridges between our species, we need more than just flight skills." Admiral Voss considered this, then inclined his head in agreement. "Your conditions are acceptable. We depart in 3 days. Be prepared." As the Admiral moved to leave, M called after him. "One question." He paused, turning back to her with regal patience. "The sabotage today. You said it was controlled, that your technicians maintained override capabilities. But the asteroid field wasn't planned." "Correct." "Then we really could have died out there." Admiral Voss studied her for a long moment. "Yes," he admitted finally. "Which makes your performance all the more significant." "It wasn't a performance," M said quietly. "It's who I am." The Centurion's mouth curved in what might have been a smile. "Precisely why you were chosen, Commander Hayes." 3 days passed in a flurry of preparations. M's true identity spread through the station like wildfire, transforming her overnight from anonymous engineer to celebrated pilot. Some, like Director Harlow, maintained a wary distance. Others, particularly the younger technicians who knew her only by reputation, approached with undisguised awe. Most surprising was the arrival of Lieutenant Auric Dane, a decorated pilot from Earth's Central Fleet, who had apparently been en route to join the Centurion training program. His initial disdain upon learning M would be his superior was palpable. "With all due respect, Commander," he'd said during their first meeting, emphasis making it clear no respect was intended. Your experience is outdated. Combat tactics have evolved significantly since your departure. M had merely smiled. Then I look forward to learning from you, Lieutenant. Right after you learn from me. The morning of departure arrived with little fanfare. M stood in her quarters, surveying the few possessions she'd accumulated over 8 years. Most would remain behind, the past packed away, just as she'd once packed away her identity. The irony wasn't lost on her. A knock at her door revealed Jin, packed and ready, his excitement barely contained. "Ship's almost repaired," he reported. "Admiral Voss says we launch in 2 hours." M nodded, picking up her small duffel. "Then we shouldn't keep them waiting." They walked together through the station corridors, passing familiar faces and places for the last time. M felt a curious lightness, as though shedding her false identity had physically unburdened her. She was Amelia Hayes again, not Commander Hayes of Earth Fleet, but something new, something of her own making. The repaired Centurion vessel gleamed in the docking bay, its elegant lines now familiar rather than alien. Ambassador Thess and Admiral Voss awaited at the boarding ramp, along with Lieutenant Dane and several Centurion officers who would form the core of the new training program. "Commander Hayes," Ambassador Thess greeted her. "Your punctuality honors us." M smiled. "Just Hayes now, Ambassador, or M, if you prefer." "Names are significant," the Centurion observed. "The choice of how one is addressed reflects one's perception of self." "Then call me M," she confirmed. "It's who I've chosen to be." Admiral Voss stepped forward, extending a data cylinder. "As promised, all evidence pertaining to your case. Earth authorities have been notified and have agreed to full exoneration." M accepted the cylinder, its weight somehow less significant than she'd imagined. "Thank you, Admiral, though I find I care less about their judgment than I once did." "A wise perspective," he approved. "The past informs but need not define." The boarding process proceeded smoothly, the mixed human-Centurion crew finding their assigned quarters and stations with minimal confusion. M found herself on the bridge as departure preparations began, not at the pilot's console, but standing beside it as an observer and advisor. Lieutenant Dane took the controls, his movements precise but rigid compared to M's fluid style. Admiral Voss stood nearby, watching with keen interest as the human pilot guided the ship through the undocking sequence. "Your assessment?" the Admiral asked M quietly. "Good technical foundation," she replied honestly. "Needs to trust his instincts more than his training." "And can you teach such a thing?" M smiled. "I can create the conditions where he'll learn it for himself." The ship cleared the station gracefully, accelerating toward open space. Through the view screen, M watched the gas giant recede, its storms still raging in magnificent chaos. For 8 years, she'd orbited it in stasis, trapped in a prison of her own making. Now she was free, not because her name had been cleared, but because she'd reclaimed her true self. "Course laid in for Centurion Training Facility," Lieutenant Dane reported. "Estimated arrival in 72 hours. "Proceed," Admiral Voss instructed, then turned to M. "I suggest you use this time to familiarize yourself with our training protocols. Lieutenant Dane can assist." The young pilot's expression tightened slightly, but he nodded agreement. "Of course, Admiral." As the officers dispersed to their duties, M found herself alone at the view screen, watching stars streak past as the ship accelerated to cruising speed. Behind her, she heard the soft approach of Ambassador Thess. "Regrets, M. Hayes?" the Centurion asked gently. M considered the question. She was leaving behind the only home she'd known for 8 years, embarking on an uncertain future, with a species that had until recently been humanity's adversaries. By all logic, she should be filled with doubt. Instead, she felt only anticipation. "No regrets, Ambassador. Just possibilities." "A most enlightened perspective." The Centurion moved to stand beside her, robes shimmering with colors that seemed to match the starfield beyond. "You know, of course, why you were truly selected." M glanced at the ambassador, curious. "Admiral Voss said it was my piloting skills." "That was part of the equation, certainly. But there are many skilled pilots in your fleet." Ambassador Thess's multifaceted eyes reflected the starlight. "What set you apart was your response to injustice. When your world betrayed you, you did not seek revenge or surrender to bitterness. You found a new way to exist, a new purpose. You adapted." The ambassador gestured toward the stars. "In the space between worlds, adaptation is survival. Those who cannot evolve beyond their programming, whether biological or cultural, cannot thrive in changing environments." M understood then. "You chose me because I was forced to become something new. And succeeded." These confirmed. "Now you will help others do the same. Centurions learning human adaptability. Humans learning Centurion precision. Together, perhaps, creating something greater than either." The ship hummed around them, carrying them forward into unknown territory, not just physically, but culturally and personally. M felt a sense of rightness that had eluded her for 8 long years. She was a pilot again. But more than that, she was herself, the person she had always been beneath the false identity and self-doubt. "I think I'll check on Jin," she said after a moment. "He's probably reassembling half your engine room by now." Ambassador Thess made a sound that might have been laughter. "Engineer Park has already identified 3 inefficiencies in our propulsion systems. Admiral Voss is adjusting to his enthusiasm." M smiled, imagining the scene. "That's Jin. He never could resist improving things." "Another human quality worth cultivating," the ambassador observed. "The drive to make what works function better still." M nodded, then took a last look at the stars before turning toward the corridor that would lead her to her friend and, beyond him, to her future. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges she couldn't yet imagine. But for the first time in 8 years, she was moving forward as her true self, neither hiding from her past nor defined by it. Commander Amelia Hayes was gone. Dr. Amelia Morgan had never really existed. M, just M, piloted her own course now, through asteroids and politics and the uncharted space between 2 civilizations, and she wouldn't have it any other way. As she walked the corridors of the Centurion ship, crew members both human and alien nodded respectfully, not because of her rank or her reputation, but because of what they had witnessed, her skill, her courage, her authenticity when it mattered most. In the end, that was all anyone could ask for. To be recognized not for titles or mistakes, but for the truth at their core. M had found hers again, in the most unlikely of places. A cockpit she'd sworn never to enter, under the watchful eyes of aliens who had seen her more clearly than her own people. The ship accelerated to light speed, carrying them all toward whatever waited beyond the next star. M smiled. For the first time in 8 years, she was eager to find out.